It is impossible to forget. I mean, it's simple enough, right? Sometimes a person can only take so much and gain so little. Obviously, this is no traditional definition or advice from a good friend. Suffering is the word that describes it. What is it with depression? The incurable condition that most people get. Whether it's tragic trauma or overusage of a substance, or when the body just breaks down, it stabs at us like 1,000 knives, striking the emotions that we don't want to tamper with. And even then, it depends on one person's will to say it's time to give in, leading only to a dark sleep. I guess I'm saying I go through this night and day, and waiting for the time to come where I'll give in. Yet I go on resisting my emotions for what I lost, a gift that was one of a kind. The beginning of time was no more than a day in the week. For any normal being, it was Thursday. I'm not saying I'm bored. I'm saying try something new. For today was cold. On the great castle of Treblinhouse, the two familiar figures that stayed at the top of the tower lay waste only at the top as they gave in to the gloominess of the day. The great beauty and immortal of the world, Juevene, lay looking only into the sky as the clouds gathered, being drifting in thought without ever thinking of anything else, as though spacing out into nothing and reaching that comfort zone that most people could only wish for. Her hair was a wondrous white as snow. Her skin a beautiful fair brown, like no other, the fairest in the land. She wore a large red dress that went all the way down and dragged on the floor, so long that her feet were not visible, as she brushed aside part of her dress on top of the giant table that she lay on. On top of the giant table, it was a bed structure, no doubt, with a giant black cushion that covered the top surface. There was no roof to the tower, and she can feel no cold, for it did not bother any immortal such as her. She appeared at the age of only 18 years old, if not younger, but hard to determine her age with no wrinkle on her skin. She was pure beauty, perfect hazel eyes. Those eyes can be lost within a storm, or after the storm, as it looks upon the sky, the same image. She began looking around the room, only to feel distracted with the second princess of Galee. Galee was the dark side of the room, the negative side, the lustful side, temptation in the shape of a figure. No more. Galee walked up to Juevene, looking at her hair, brushing his pale, skinned hand across the long hair. He opened his mouth only to yawn in boredness, revealing his perfect ivory fangs. His face and the rest of his body, whatever flesh was exposed, was pure pale, with no signification of any type of blood in the body. He wore a strange, dark cape made of black feathers that seemed to go over most of his body was the cloak, or sash, may you call it. His hair is midnight black, the darkest and opposite of Juevene. He brushed his other hand across the hair, and could think of nothing else to say but, "Why is it that you must do this and stare at nothing when there is truly nothing out there? It makes the day go by slower," said Galee. "And what is it to you? You lived as long as I have, or I've existed more than you have. And when you came to be with me, you had nothing better to do than to feed against those others down there. You can be a bother and troublesome sometimes, Juevene. I don't know why I even bother, but then again, I realize now why I'm always here. Because you're my eternal love, whether you like it or not. My eternal love, my eternal blood that will never run out. And my lust to you brings you close to temptation that you can never break." "You mean as far as I can let it go through, Galee? I don't think so. I think you want my attention every time." "That's because I have nothing better to do," said Juevene. Galee looked away in disappointment, walking to the edge of the tower. He began rubbing and screeching some of his claws against the concrete in anger at what Juevene just said. He brushed some of his hair away from his face as the wind began picking up and looked out into the distance. "Why is it that this island always seeks to pique my interest? Why is it that we can't go anywhere else? Is it because I'm with you, and my seduction towards you draws me closer to immortality?" Juevene looked towards Galee in confusion, and now becoming more focused on Galee. "Why do you say such nonsense? You say it like as though you're a poet, and yet you make no sense whatsoever. We're here because we got nothing better to do, and the world changes, but we do not." Galee began falling in thought as he finally sat next to her, brushing his claws against her white, perfect hair. "Why is it that you must be so difficult? I know I can be confusing, and at times I make no sense. But your beauty draws closer." He lunged his face closer, revealing his eyes to be a perfect gold brown as they glowed in the darkness as Juevene began locking contact with them. Her facial expressions began changing, as though now she was hypnotized into the eyes of the perfect golden brown that shined in the darkness, and even from his dark hair, they could be seen miles away, and it would feel of no innocence and no pride in them. "Is it time for you to feed yet? You know me well, Juevene." Before anything else could be said, Galee's teeth were already sank in her neck, as also could be seen more holes and scars of previous bites were around her neck, and her arms and whatever fleshy parts were exposed. As could be seen, Galee had his way with Juevene for some time now, and no one to say anything else otherwise. He had finished. Oh, that is life, and that is rich. You taste just as much as you look. He began licking his lips and his teeth as a few drops began to drizzle from the side of his mouth. Juevene only rubbed the edge of her